Welcome to Micro Focus Data Discovery. In this session, we'll be talking about targets. Targets are a way to define a location to where we send information to. So when we send a file to, so we might find an example that we use is that if we find a document that contains, let's say, a purchase order. So this purchase order, we know that perhaps it contains sensitive information, but we know that we cannot delete it because based on regulation, we need to keep this for a particular year within a particular country. And so we have a product called Content Manager that allows you to control the retention and disposition of data that recording to this type of legislation, but we need to send the file to that. So we need to send that to it using what's called a target. The definition of these targets are within inside the connect tile. And you can see targets on the left-hand side here. Okay, so a target defines the location of where we saw that. This basically the system that we're going to send it to. Here we go. Let's have a look at the example of this target that we've created here. At the moment, we're limited to Content Manager in terms of our targets. But in future versions, there'll be new targets that we'll create for different types of repositories to send information to. So here we define the type and the agent cluster that we're going to use to actually execute sending information to this target. The credentials that are used to actually create the file on the target system. And the configuration. And the configuration here, so with Content Manager, the definition is you need to use the URL that has an open service API. So this is the REST-based API calls that are made to create the files. Actually, when it actually calls the CM service API to actually create the records within inside the system, it uses the bulk engine to create them. Okay, so within inside this defines the target, the place, the system that we're going to send this information to. So in a kind of real world live scenario, this would be the customer's CM repository, whether that be hosted in the cloud or on premise. You just point it to that open REST-based service API service, and that will create the records. But we don't want to just send this over, throw this over the wall and send them to the system. We need to specifically say where to put them, because the analysis will have found that this is perhaps an invoice or a purchase order or a sales contract, or we know the type of information it is through the analysis. So we need to tell it exactly where to put it. And this is what is defined in the destinations. I've defined two different destinations here. So let's say these are invoices and sales contracts. And this one is linked to invoices linked to this particular CM classification within inside the record repositories. To edit this, I'll show you the definition. So here we just give it a name and a description to help us define when the users are using this to pick to send this information to. Two, we use a kind of detailed description. And the origin ID. The origin ID is used to actually tell where to put it. An origin ID is an object within inside Content Manager that has a default, can be set for the default classification, default retention schedule. So the origin ID is defined in Content Manager. You apply give the origin ID here, and this will send it directly to Content Manager. Give it a particular classification, apply the correct retention schedules, and move that file into the correct location. Okay, so that's the definition of targets and how to create them. In later sessions, you'll see how we can use those targets when we're using the workbooks to send that information to. Thank you very much.